we were all evacuated. My mother had been given 2 days' notice, and we were all evacuated. We didn't know where we were going. We had a gas mask over our shoulder, each of my sister and I. She was only 6, my sister. And we had a small bag with clothes in it, because they'd given you a list of what you could take away. Gas mask over your arm. A postcard in my pocket with my home address on it.
Welcome once again to For Honour's Sake, the podcast from the Association of Jewish Ex-Servicemen and Women. I'm Dan Fox, Chair Emeritus of AJEX, and we're delighted today to be at the home in Edgware of Ron Shelley, a former National Serviceman and a twice former National Chair of AJEX itself. Ron, thanks for having us today.
My pleasure.
Perhaps we can begin where we always begin. Where and when were you born, and what was it like growing up?
Okay, I was born in Stepney Green, in St Helens Terrace, Stepney Green, in 1929. My parents having got married in 1927 at Sandys Road Synagogue. My father's parents came from Holland. Although they married in London, and my mother's grandparents came from Eastern Europe. And it just so happens that one of my grandsons has just done enormous family history.
Oh, wonderful.
And so forth. But we moved fairly quickly, and my first recollection was in 1933, April 33, when we were now living at 166 High Street, North East Ham, where my father had a hairdressing shop on the first floor, and we lived on the second and third floor, which was quite common in those days,
Sure.
as you know. And my sister was born, and I remember sitting on the steps, on the stairs, I should say, below the bedroom level, wondering what was going on. I must be sure. And the other second thing I remember was going to school in Latham Road, East Ham, just off the High Street, it must have been September 1934. All I remember was that there was another young girl who's joined at the same time. Her name was Ivy Butcher, and I've often wondered what sort of a life she had. She wasn't Jewish, but what sort of a life she had over all the years and what happened to her. But I never came across her again. By 1939, we were back in the East End. My father had unfortunately made a mistake with the entranceway he was on the first floor, and he allowed the first floor businessman to build in a way that people couldn't see the entranceway to my father's salon.
Right.
And that caused the business dropped, and we moved, and in 1939 we were back in the East End. I had a very happy childhood. My father had a car in the early 30s. In fact, he had a car before there were compulsory driving tests. The Highway Code had come in 1931, I think it was, but there were no driving tests, I think 34 or 35. And we regularly, it was on either his afternoon or Thursday afternoon after school, but more regularly on a Sunday, we always went to the coast. Jaywick Sands, which was near Clacton,
Sure.
Shoebury Ness, Canberra Sands on the south coast, Runnymede. I remember all these places, and we went on a regular basis. And our holidays were spent under canvas with my mother's sisters and my cousins down at Dymchurch in Kent. So it was a very happy childhood.
And what was school like for you?
Well, school. I moved a couple. I went to Latham Road, as I said, junior school. Until I can't remember what happened, but all I know is in 1939 we were back. I was at Redmond's Road, main Jewish school in Redmond's Road, and I remember quite clearly in March 1939, the headmaster had asked my mother to come up to see him with me, and I remember sitting there, and he said to my mother, "I hope, Mrs. Shelley, you don't expect too much of your son." Extraordinary comment he made.
Unbelievable.
Yes. And my mother was very disappointed in that. I mean, she had 2 children, me and my sister at that time. My sister was 4 years younger than me. But that was the comment he made. And strangely enough, Dan, how many years later? that was 1939. In 1968, when my eldest daughter was 11, we went to her junior school in Edgware, and the headmistress, the form mistress, said exactly the same thing to Terry and I, my wife Terry, about my daughter Gillian, the eldest daughter. Don't expect too much of your daughter. And when I look, my daughter became a lawyer and did very nicely, partner in a firm until she got married and started having children of her own. But it goes to show you how teachers need to be very careful
Absolutely.
to assume what the future is of any of us, because you can't tell at the age of 11.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely. Terrible thing for a teacher to say.
It was. Yeah. But otherwise, I had a very nice... what did I do? I can't remember very much. I must have played a bit of football. I don't know. I do remember in 1939 going to see Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
No, not Gone with the Wind. Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Okay, Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, sorry?
The Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Quite right, thank you for that. Yes, I do remember in 1939 going to see The Wizard of Oz in East Ham, where we still were. And then the war broke out. Sure, yeah. But of course we knew the war was coming. Yeah.
So you were by 1939, back in the East End of London, war breaks out. Yeah. As a 10-year-old, what was your feeling about it? What was your awareness of what was happening and what the consequences might be?
We were all aware, because first of all, we had barrage balloons in the air, right? As you know what a barrage, barrage balloons in the air. All the major buildings, local and national, were surrounded by sandbags in case of blast. We all had a gas mask, right? Evacuation was the government had issued all sorts of pamphlets, and on the radio, there was no television, but on the radio about evacuation. They wanted the children away from the big cities, because they didn't want the idea. They'd seen what had happened in Guernica in 1937. I'm using hindsight here. They'd seen what happened in Guernica in 1937 when the Germans dive-bombed Guernica, and they thought there were going to be hundreds of thousands of casualties in the big cities. And that's why they wanted the children out. They didn't want a headline, 50 children killed or whatever it was. They dug trenches in the parks and in green spaces, ostensibly for people to shelter if there was a bombing during the day, but in fact it was to be a burial place.
Yes.
And they painted the tops of pillar boxes with some special paint that if gas came down, the colour would change. So all of us, even though we didn't understand the broader picture of what all this meant, we could see what we all knew. We all knew from the headlines, and don't forget, so much of our knowledge in those days came from Pathé News. If you went to the local cinema, you had an A film and a B film and Pathé News. That was where we got so much of our knowledge. I know you got it from the newspaper, but so much of the news was Pathé News, because it was all before television, long before. We knew war was coming. I don't think I can say to you I knew a bit about the First World War, because when I was growing up, from time to time, my parents would talk about Gallipoli, the Somme, and Ypres.
Had family served in World War One? Had they had family who'd served?
No, Dad was too young.
Yeah.
Served in World War Two.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to that as well.
Dad was 10 when, like me, I was 10 when World War Two broke out. My father was 10 when World War One broke out.
Sure. No. And in 1940, you became an evacuee yourself.
39.
39, one of the earliest ones.
I went away on the 1st of September 1939.
Okay, so at the very outbreak of war.
2 days before.
Yeah.
That was the day when the Germans marched into Poland. Yeah. We were all evacuated. My mother had been given 2 days' notice, and we were all evacuated. We didn't know where we were going. We had a gas mask over our shoulder, each of my sister and I. She was only 6, my sister. And we had a small bag with clothes in it, because they'd given you a list of what you could take away. Gas mask over your arm, a postcard in my pocket with my home address on it. But the idea was, as soon as I got anywhere, you would write on it with address right away, you see. And I was on the 3rd of September, 2 days later. We were evacuated to Virginia Water. when we got there, we were taken into the village hall where the billeting person was. And there were a number of local residents there who had agreed to take in children. No one wanted my sister and I.
Oh.
They wandered around. Whether they didn't want two children, I don't know. But no one wanted. And the billeting officer left us in the care of one of his assistants. And he went out and he came back with a Mr. and Mrs. Hammond. And they looked, I said, we'll take them. And we walked out of that, amazing. We walked out of that village hall hand in hand with these two strange people and walked a half a mile to number 6 Fairview Villas, Trump's Green Road, Virginia Water.
And, I mean, the experience obviously had a huge impact on you.
It did, yes. Yeah.
And so what was it like? You're away from home. Were you still able to contact your family? Were you still aware of what they were going through? Was the experience of care a good one for you with the Hammonds?
Well, let's just deal with my father joined in 1940 the London Ambulance Brigade and drove through first of all the Battle of Britain, and more importantly through the Blitz, where he learned a bit about he was a ladies' hairdresser, but he learned a bit. He was called up in 1942 into the Royal Army Medical Corps, shipped out to India, and didn't come home until 9 months after the war ended. I was an evacuee with my sister. I was always self-sufficient.
What was your father's name?
Jack.
Jack Shelley.
Yeah. Jack, Frederick Jack. But he was known as Jack. But I was always fairly self-sufficient. And so I managed quite well. I don't know how. Didn't have much schooling in the first year. I lost a year, actually. Because I didn't have much schooling. But they sent me to what was known as St. Bernard's Roman Catholic Central School, which had been evacuated from the East End, Stepney Green also, to Engerfield Green, which is a small village halfway between Virginia Water and Windsor, where they'd commandeered a home, a big stately home, if you like, and made it into a school. I remember it clearly because the first time I came across a game called croquet. They had a croquet lawn there. I remember it to this day, and I learned to play croquet at that school.
But not bowls at this time.
No
the bowls came later.
No. Never, from the East End of London, no one knew about croquet. I will tell you that right now, you see. But anyway, I learnt then. And the teachers, I used to see my parents quite regularly, once or twice a month.
But they'd come down to visit?
They'd come down, and we went home for Christmas that first year because it was the phony war, if you remember correct. Or not you remember, but that's what it was called, the phony war. And I remember going home for Christmas. But as time went on, and once the bombing started, once the Battle of Britain started particularly, and then the Blitz, my parents, I didn't see so much of my parents. They always came regularly, we corresponded, but we weren't living with them. And it was a peculiar. Well, that was it. That was, and I managed much better than my sister. My sister, unfortunately, was too young. Although my parents did what they thought was best, it didn't go down well. My sister suffered, and her life was much more difficult after the war than it might have been otherwise. She was too young. It was nobody's fault. I've often thought about my parents did what they felt was good, better, save their children's lives.
Of course.
And while
easy choices.
It's not quite in the same as the Kindertransport, but because when they sent those to England, they knew they may never see them again.
Sure.
But the principle was similar. Yeah. That was it.
Still a separation at a very young age.
I was also self-sufficient.
Yeah.
I always have been. In 1942, the teachers decided I should sit for the junior supplementary examination. I was 13, and which I passed, and I went to a grammar school, Stroh's Grammar School, Egham.
Okay, so this was still, as an evacuee,
you were
still put all through that. And was there, we'll come back to the grammar school, was there much of a Jewish life for you while you were evacuated, or it was separation from that as well?
Well, yes, I was in Bar Mitzvah in 1942 when I should have been. Dad was already in the army. My mother was doing war work in Norfolk. My sister and I were there, so I wasn't bar mitzvahed. It was be 60 years after that, when I was 73, I got bar mitzvahed in my synagogue.
Wonderful. Yeah. And so on into grammar school, were there particular subjects you liked, excelled at? Were there particular interests for you?
Well, yes. I liked maths, geography and history. Those were I didn't get on with science mainly because when I joined, I was a bit older. I didn't join at the age of 11. So when I joined, science, which I hadn't studied at all, physics and science, I was very poor at and remained poor throughout there because I'd missed 2 years, in fact. But geography, history and maths I was very good at, yes. I got distinctions in all three. When I took what is now O levels, but in those were called general school certificate with matriculation.
Yeah.
I got a distinction with those three. Yeah.
And so you were at school in Egham all the way through to the
1946.
46. So
well, I came home in 1945 when the war ended. My sister had come home a year earlier. She had pleaded with my mother. She was unhappy, and she came home in 1944. Because I must have said to my mother, I want to stay on because I want to finish my education. I don't want. So in 1945 May, I came home. 1945 May, I came home to live with my mother. That was 6 years. 1939, 5.5 years.
Yes.
5.5 years since
and
the war.
Your dad was still away.
Dad was still away in
overseas,
India.
Yeah.
It was another 9 months before he came home.
Yeah.
And I commuted from Stepney Green. We lived in when I came home in 1945. I lived with my mother. We lived in 2 rooms in a tenement, no running water, no indoor loo. These were all shared by other residents on a landing. One loo for what it was, cold water which you took down, no bathroom, etc. But we survived. And funnily enough, once I got back living with my mother, it was like I was never away. Although it was a big time, and even now I look back on it, it is quite extraordinary that I lived. Once I started living with my mother again, it was like I'd never been away. It was strange.
Yeah. And you were commuting back to the school in Egham.
I commuted for a year.
Yeah.
I commuted from Stepney Green. I was caught the 7:10 bus to the Bank of England. And what was then the tube line, the Waterloo tube line to Waterloo from Bank of England, the 8:14 train from Waterloo to Egham, came in at 5 to 9, ran to the school, quarter of a mile to the school because I had to be in for 9 o'clock.
Sure.
And did that for a year.
Wow. Yeah. But passed with your distinctions and everything, and then it was out into the world of work or further.
Yes.
Yeah.
My mother wanted me to be a civil engineer because she had worked for a firm called J.L. Keir. Now Keir's still around.
Yes.
Keir's big construction firm, and she felt that becoming a civil engineer would be a good occupation. I went to the London School of Building for an interview with the principal with the idea of doing a 2 or 3 year course, whatever it was. And when I left there, I said to my mother, I don't think this is for me. Dad was still in India. No, he'd come home. I said to my mother, I don't think this is for me, Mum. She said, well, what would you like to? I said, I'd like to be an accountant. Why is that? I said, well, I'm good at maths. I mean, I knew nothing. She knew nothing, and I knew nothing. That was easier said than done, because getting before the war, to become either a lawyer or a solicitor, you had to pay a premium. After the war, that was still norm in many firms, and that was out of the question. The idea of my parents paying a premium was just they couldn't afford it. Dad was struggling to get a decent job. He didn't get a decent job at first. He went to work when he came home. It took him 3 or 4 months to get a job as a ladies' hairdresser. Ended up working in a department store, earned very little money, poor money, and the idea that my parents could afford to send me to pay a premium was not on. So eventually what happened, Dan, is that my mother took me to the Jewish Board of Guardians in Middlesex Street. The Jewish Board of Guardians eventually became Jewish Care,
yes, yeah.
as you probably know. And part of the role of the Jewish Board of Guardians was to apprentice young boys They also had other roles. They made loans to small businessmen to try, who they thought was entrepreneurial. Anyway, they found me a small firm in Bishopsgate, number 65 Bishopsgate, called Cedar & Co. And he agreed, didn't want a premium, paid me £30 a year in my first year, rising by the princely sum of £10 per annum. I think I was the only person at the end of 5 years who went into the army and earned more money in the army than I was earning as an article clerk to it. But I did well.
Yeah. So you joined them at about 16. Was
no,
it earlier?
I was 7. I joined them in February 47. So I was just before my 18th birthday.
18th birthday.
Yeah.
And did that allow you to defer national service then?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you deferred national service for
5 years.
For 5 years.
Well, I'd have been in within a year. 18, I think it was then. So I would have been in, but they gave me 5 years deferment. I always felt at the time they wouldn't want me. I thought 5 years is a long time, but it didn't happen that way.
But nonetheless, they came calling you again.
They came very quickly. My final results, I got honours in the intermediate exam of 1949. I came 9th in the country out of 1,100 and something candidates.
Fantastic.
And in 1950, took the November 51 exams, final. Results came out in February 52. Within 10 days, I had a notice from the army. You will report to Devizes Army Camp on such and such a day in April. Here is a one-way ticket.
But appropriately enough, given that you were a qualified accountant, they put you in the Royal Army Pay Corps.
They put me in the Royal. Biggest mistake for them and the biggest mistake for me.
Why do you say that?
Because they couldn't use me. They didn't use any decent individual who could understand figures could have done what I did. Right. They didn't need a qualified accountant for the job they gave me.
Yeah.
Right. I should have gone in the Royal Army Service Corps, something like that.
Yes.
But I didn't, and I didn't appreciate it at the time.
No. So again, just to come back, because again we're beginning to talk in these podcasts to more and more ex-national servicemen. And I'm just really curious about how it felt. You know, whatever age you might have joined at with the deferment or bang on 18, you know it's coming. You know there's going to be this chunk of your life, and at that age, 2 or 3 years is a huge chunk of your life. Were you did you have to sort of mentally prepare? Whether it was a lot of administrative, like putting your life in order, because you know that there was going to be this lacuna of 2 or 3 years in your life that you knew was coming. How did you even begin to approach that?
Well, I think the fact I'd been away as an evacuee for nearly 6 years somehow had attuned me to the idea that if I've got to go away again for another 2 years, then I will. I never had a problem with it. I'm not saying I wanted to go. I wasn't at all keen on the idea, but I didn't have any problem with accepting it. If that's what the country wanted me, then I had to do it. Sure. I didn't have any feeling about it. I never thought of finding a way of getting out of it. I never went to a local doctor that had flat feet or whatever some people did. I just accepted that was it, and I would do 2 years.
And so, reporting to Devizes, then straight into basic training for 6 months or so? 6 weeks? 6 weeks.
It was 6 to 8 weeks basic training, square bashing, as you know it's called.
Of course, yeah.
And I did my square bashing in Devizes. I can't say I enjoyed it, but I did it. Yeah. And then was posted for, I can't remember, I ended up in Reading, anyway, Raniket Camp, Reading.
Yeah. Did you move around much during the 2 years?
No, I didn't. I think I had one posting, can't remember the first posting, but within 3 months of the finishing my square bashing, they posted me to Reading. That would have been in 1952, probably about August time. And I spent the rest of my time in Reading. Okay.
And again, did you find there was much space, much opportunity to have a Jewish life within the forces?
Well, fortunately, there was, I don't know if it still exists today, but there was a synagogue in Reading, and there was a particular couple called Mr. and Mrs. Orbach, whose son, much older than us, but he was a chartered accountant, had a practice in London. And I and my two close friends, Sidney Goldwater, who became chairman of AJEX as well. He was my closest friend for years till he died in '85. He was also at Raniket camp with me at the same particular time. But so there were people in Reading who knew of us, of the camp, and they invited us most Friday nights to have Friday night dinner with them.
Oh, lovely.
So we went to the synagogue. We then back to their homes. They lit the candles and all the usual trimmings. So I won't say it was every Friday, because some weekends we got 48-hour pass and we would go home. But otherwise, that was a very nice experience with these people, Mr. and Mrs. Orbach.
Yeah. So thankfully, a fairly uneventful sort of 2 years.
Yes, uneventful. Christmas was always on guard duty.
Yeah.
Because we were Jewish, and so we were doing the guard. It wasn't much guarding to do, but we were on guard duty. There were a few Jewish boys in the camp, not many, 6 or 7, I would think. In the camp, and so we always did guard duty and what have you. Did a lot of sport. One of the interesting things when I was in the army was that on the orderly notice board, they would put up a notice: if you're interested in football, England are playing Chile or England are playing somebody. If you would like tickets, please apply. So I went to see in '52. I remember going to see England v Hungary. First time we'd ever been beaten at Wembley.
Wow, very famous match.
And they had a superb side.
Pushkas and those guys.
Pushkas, Hidikuti and so forth. And I went to see England v FIFA, 4-4. And I went to a number of different games while I was in the army. Yeah.
So after the 2 years, you're demobilised.
Yes.
And is it straight back to the accounting firm?
Or is
no. They simply wouldn't have you back.
Without going into detail, I wouldn't go back there.
Oh, right.
I wouldn't. I decided. No. There was no way I was going back there. I wasn't treated as well as I felt I should have been. I don't want to go into detail on that, but I wasn't treated as well, and therefore I had no intention of going back. So my mother's, because she worked for Keir's accountants gave me a job. I can't remember their name now, but they wouldn't ask for me because they wanted a premium.
Right, the same as before, yeah.
So that was a short-sighted thing. So it took me took my GCAs in June 1946, but it wasn't until February 47 that I got 5 years training contract.
57. 47 or 57?
57.
57.
No, 50. Sorry, no, 47. 47. Yeah.
The original, yeah, that's the original. Sorry, with the original company.
That was.
Yeah. But then after your national service.
Oh, after my national service, came out of the army in April 1954. They gave me £100 gratuity and a suit. Right.
Still got it?
Which was very good. I don't think so. The £100 gratuity I blew on an engagement ring for my fiancée, so I was broke again. And we got engaged. 8 months later, we were married.
And how had you met? Had you met during your national service or before? Yeah.
We met. Oh no, but met her before. Because she came down to the passing out parade at Devizes in 1952.
And what was her name?
Terry Rhodes, became Terry Shelley.
Of course.
And we were married for almost 60 years. Yes.
Yeah. And 2 children you had.
4.
4 all girls you had with.
All girls.
You had with Terry.
The eldest was born in 57.
Yeah.
Twins in 1960. And my youngest daughter was born in 69.
And so your accountancy career continued through to retirement?
Yes, built up a practice.
I
always wanted to be a practicing accountant. I was a bit lucky in the sense that in 1958 I hadn't built up much of a practice. Came out of the army in 54, went to work. When the firm, very nice firm in Cunard House in the City of London, when they learned I wanted to be a practicing accountant, they said, you can't stay with us because you've got to have a practicing certificate and we don't employ people who have a practice. So I left. I was determined I was going to be a practicing accountant. It wasn't easy. And in fact, by 1958, I was doing subcontract work, a lot of subcontract work, which had no future to it, just for money. And I remember saying to my wife in the latter part of 1958, I've got to go back to work. We're not making a living. We've got one daughter now. And she said, just hold on to the end of the year, see what transpires. It just so happened, I was very fortunate, Dan, in that building, number 40 Gooch Street, where I had a one-room office and facilities were provided by a solicitor. I was on the top floor, third floor. First floor was a firm of solicitors. My cousin was a partner in there, and I'd taken a room on the top floor. And they provided secretarial services, in fact. In 1958, the guy in the middle floor, so there was a shop on the ground floor, the solicitors on the first floor, another accountant on the second floor, and me on the third floor. A fellow called Jim McKee came to see me. I'd seen him a few times, but he said, "Ron," he said, "I know you're an accountant, and I'm an accountant. I don't like accountants. I want to sell my practice. Are you interested?" And I said, "I am very interested." I said, "But I have to tell you, I've got no money." He said, "Look," I said, "I'll tell you what I want, but I want you to put down 500 quid, and you can pay the rest off over 4 years without interest." I said, "The only problem I've got, Jim, is I haven't got 500 quid." And this is the truth.
It was a lot of money.
Well, it was 500 quid in 1958. I didn't have it. And he said, "Look, you find it and we'll do a deal." So here am I, a chartered accountant. I went to my bank, no way. Went to his bank, no way. I went to my father's bank. They said, if your father would put £500 into a separate account and freeze it until you pay it back, we'll give you 500. I said, well, I'm borrowing from my father. And that's what happened.
Right, okay.
So I borrowed 500 quid from my father, and I paid my father and Jim McKee off in the next 4 years. But it gave me, I started a business.
Absolutely.
I started a practice and never looked back.
Fantastic. And when and how did you start getting involved with AJEX, the Association of Jewish Ex-Servicemen and Women?
Well, yes, reluctantly is the answer. Reluctantly. Well, I see, when I came out of the army in 54, all us, AJEX had never gone out of their way to recruit national servicemen. And AJEX was seen as representing the Second World War Jewish veterans community.
Yeah, and still some First World War at that stage as well, would have been, yeah.
That's right, the chairman of AJEX at the end of the war was Joe Webber, who'd been a First World War veteran.
Yeah.
Right. You'll see his photo up in AJEX if you look.
Absolutely.
But he was the chairman then. And so I had no intention of joining AJEX, because I never saw AJEX as representing national servicemen. But Bichette it was, we decided to, I'm not talking too long, am I?
No, absolutely not.
Right. We decided, my best friend Sidney Goldwater and had got married, and they bought a house in Queensberry.
Where were you living at this? Sorry, I was going to ask where you were living at this time.
After we got married, we lived in a furnished room in Wood Green.
Oh.
Okay. Both came from Hackney. We lived in a furnished room in Wood Green. And we thought, well, Sydney's and Greta have bought this house in Queensbury. We never knew where Queensbury was, never heard of it, I knew where it was.
Exotic end of the Jubilee line.
So I had a car and we drove to Queensbury.
Actually, the Jubilee line wasn't around then.
Yeah,
of course not. No, it was proper countryside.
Yeah. Anyway, we sort of looked at the area and we thought, well, it might be quite nice. So we bought number 42 Langland Crescent. And we shared a driveway with number 40. We soon found out that a fellow called Alf Bird, who had been Jewish, prisoner of war in World War II, served in the Western Desert, taken by the Germans in the Western Desert, or by the Italians, and was in a prisoner of war camp in Germany, and survived even though he was Jewish. Mm. And he lived next door, and he was determined that I would join AJEX. Right? He said, it'd be good for you, Ron, it'd be good for business, OSA. You'll meet lots of people who need an accountant, OSA. You know what OSA means? It means forget it. And so that attracted me to be truthful with you, to the idea I would join. And within 6 weeks he was back. This is 1956. He was back and said, Ron, we need an auditor. There are 400 members. Your name will be at the bottom. People will see your name.
This is for the local branch?
This is the local branch of Edgware.
Yeah.
Biggest branch in the association. 400 members or more. He said, it'd be good for you. Well, I couldn't resist that. So before, I said, fine, I'll be your local auditor. Before I did any auditing, he was back again. Ron, we need a secretary. You'll meet the committee. They're all in business. You'll get some business. Right? A good line. And so I became, in 1956, the secretary of Edgware AJEX. And never looked back.
Never looked back. I was going to say, it wasn't just good for you and for business, it was very, very good for AJEX in the end. You got involved nationally too, and by the 70s you were the youngest, I believe it still stands, the youngest national chair.
I think that might be right, yes.
And for your first stint as national chair.
Yes, I was the first national... Well, locally I became local chairman in 64 for 3 years. I'd been the treasurer and what have you. Edgware in those days had a very nice when the local chairman retired after 3 years, they put on a dinner and ball for him, and my dinner and ball was at the Café Royal in Regent Street, and we had as a cabaret the world quick step dancing champion. You can look at my pictures about dancing.
I had a very nice reception at the Tower of London, as you knew, but I never got any of this.
We had the world, this is what it was like in AJEX.
Yeah.
And so I did my 3 years, and in 1968 I went to the provincial conference, and on the way back Philip Mission, who was
yes.
You may
also
know,
very young as a chair. Yeah.
Absolutely. He suggested to me that I ought to join National AJEX, which I did in 1968 as the national treasurer. And by 75, I became the national chair.
And again, never looked back. You became an absolute stalwart.
It's become a life.
Absolutely.
Apart from the practice, the family, and AJEX in the middle, that's been my life.
I mean, you are practically, I think, synonymous with AJEX now and with its history. And you were chair again in the early 2000s, I think?
2004.
Yeah.
For 2 years.
Yeah. And what was the organisation, the community, the Jewish veterans community had obviously changed a lot in those 30 years or so.
Well, yes. Extraordinary. It's AJEX, most people don't appreciate it, but AJEX is quite an extraordinary organisation. As you know, you've been national chair, but you're much longer than that. But from my point of view, the association has given the community and all the organisation a gloss which no other organisation can give it. I'm not saying it's better, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying it's any better, but because we represent men and women who served, and there's no higher accolade for any minority community than to be able to say, we served all over the world, we died all over the world. That gives our community a standing, because in this country with its military history, there's no accolade better than to say I did my bit.
Absolutely. And the finest expression of this, the expression of this, is of course the annual parade every year, for which you were parade commander for, dare we say how many years?
I did deputy for 5 and parade commander for 6.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know from what you've spoken about before how much that parade, again, you express very well how much it means to our community, but to you personally as well.
It's impossible to explain to anybody who's never led the parade the feeling you have when you march up Whitehall at the head of the AJEX parade and you see all the people, first of all the visitors who are behind the barrier at the beginning, and then all the others on both sides, the people outside the Foreign Office, the people waiting and you're marching ahead. And it is, you've done it yourself, Dan, it is a feeling, maybe because you were in the army for many years, maybe it was different. But for me, it outside the family, it's an indescribable and a feeling of extraordinary pride.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, it was to have chaired it, to still be involved, has been the greatest honour of my life.
Pride. There's no other word to describe.
Couldn't be prouder. I think for all of us who've served in any way,
Yeah.
those moments on Whitehall are our proudest moments, whether we're in uniform, in the bowler hats, the veterans' uniform, if you like, as well.
I'm writing my memoirs at the moment, and you can understand that AJEX plays an extraordinary part
Fantastic.
in the writing of them.
No, absolutely. Well, we'll certainly look forward to reading those.
If you do.
And in retirement, your life revolves around, again, your extraordinary family. You were talking before, it's now with sort of step members, 40 Shelleys and extended Shelleys,
Yes.
all over the world, mainly in Britain?
No, they're not all over the world. No, they're all here. Interestingly enough, I've been very fortunate. All my children live here, my grandchildren live here, my great-grandchildren live here.
How many great-grandchildren now?
8 at the moment.
Oh, amazing.
But I've got another granddaughter getting married next month. So everything is possible in the future.
Wonderful.
Right,
Wonderful.
and that's been number 4, and there's 5 more grandchildren who 4 of them have got partners. So we watch this space.
A few more little Rons on the way, I hope.
I just need to live long enough to see them all.
I'm sure you
Who
will.
knows? Who knows?
And apart from AJEX, there's Crown Green Bowling. And
There's bowling. There's bridge. There's for 40 years I've been conducting walks on London.
Of course, yes, your tours, yes.
I started this for my friends in Langland Crescent who knew it was a hobby of mine. And we started in 1980, I think it was. And for 20 odd years, I took them every year on a different walk in London.
I remember one of the first times we met properly and spoke properly over lunch. We met by the statue of Charles I, and you were talking me through it in the history.
And
on
over
Trafalgar
the
Square.
years, I've done walks for all sorts of even one. I remember one year the American Conference of Jewish Presidents came to London as guests of the Board of Deputies, because I spent 24 years on the Board of Deputies as an AJEX deputy. The American Conference of Presidents came to London, and I took them in a minibus on a tour of Jewish London. The same with a friend of mine or a colleague of mine. He was involved in bringing Israeli disabled soldiers to London. And when he did, he asked me to take them again in a minibus on a tour of Jewish London.
And you're still doing these tours?
I still do this when asked, mainly for charity now.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to get together with a dozen or 14 of their friends and raise a bit of money, a couple of £100 for a charity of their choice, I will do a walk.
Yeah, well, if you're listening, let us know. Get in touch. We'll put you in touch with.
I'm
Ron.
doing a couple of walks this year already.
Fantastic.
Organised. I'm still doing the walks. Yes.
Yeah. Ron, it's been absolutely fascinating. As I've said to you before, these interviews are not just cover the military history of our community, but very much the social history as well. From a personal point of view, I can't sort of thank you enough for everything you've done, and especially on the AJEX front as well. I was able to, stand and do my job as chair because of what you and so many others did beforehand. Now, usually
Can I just make one comment particularly about AJEX? The social side of it wasn't all hard work. The social side of AJEX was extraordinary. The social welfare side, the Christmas hospital scheme, the blood donor panels, and the outings for disabled people, mainly non-Jewish, and the dinners and balls we went to, the honour of going to meet the Queen, the garden parties. I mean, there was a social side to it, if that's the right word, which balanced the serious side as national chairman.
Of course, yeah.
So it was my life in that sense has been quite extraordinary. A wonderful home life, enjoyed my business life, and in between AJEX with all that it stood for.
Absolutely. And given your involvement, usually at the end of these we give people some sort of token from AJEX. I think it's fair to say you've probably got enough AJEX tchotchkes and trinkets and baubles. So we've got you instead actually a Royal Army Pay Corps plaque to go alongside everything else.
Me. I'll put that next to the photograph
as well. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And as I say, we'll look forward to interviewing again at some point and catching up on the rest of your history over the years.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ron.